Welcome to the Numbers Don't Tell Stories show. Each week, we like to give our listeners ideas on how to evaluate numbers through story. Our desire is to entertain you and provide you with useful insight. Hi, welcome back to the episode number 13 of Numbers Don't Tell Stories. I'm here, Tom Etchison, and so is Matthew Dix. We're excited here with this episode and very unique topic that has started to come up more and more, this notion of buy now, pay later. And I was astounded by this. I had been seeing, different aspects of this in, at Christmas time and different holidays and so on. But when this X post, and I'll describe it a little bit for our listening audience, came up, it was that Starbucks is now handling this notion of buy now, pay later, and so are some of the others. And Unusual Whales posted this, and so did some others. And this guy Greg is a great follow on X. He's got a lot of hilarious commentary. But the idea that you would split your Starbucks order into 4 easy payments is just crazy comedy to me. And you look at these numbers and it's astounding. And so I couldn't help but bring this up when you start thinking about numbers don't tell stories. Like, you look at this and, man, this could go a lot of directions.
It really could. It's unsettling. The story being told to me is unsettling. It's also, you're going to have to explain this to me a little bit, Tom, because the first thing is, I think it's layaway, which we've had for a long time. I know we don't do it anymore, but there used to be a thing where you went to the store and you picked out the coat you wanted and they held on to it, and you went back to the store and made 4 payments and then they gave you the coat. In this case, you're not waiting for the Starbucks. You don't have to make 4 payments and then eventually get the coffee. But it's essentially a credit card, right? Am I mistaking this?
Right. So the way, in looking at this and trying to understand it myself, because I'm thinking, well, surely this is like a credit card and they're making interest on the payments. And it's typically 4 equal payments, no interest, but there's a transaction fee to the merchant. And so this is a way for the merchant to sell more by making it more accessible, thinking, hey, the consumer, if they can divvy up their order of whatever size into these payments, they're going to be able to upsell them and sell more merchandise by paying and incurring a little bit of that cost themselves in order to incentivize the consumer. And so there's some late fees associated with this when people miss payments and so on. But it's like a interest-free credit card where the merchant is taking the risk by saying, hey, I'm going to incentivize you as the consumer. At least that's how I look at this space.
Right. I mean, it must be a play on late fees too, because I know banks, for example, make an enormous amount of money on fees, overdraft fees and things like that. So it must work into the model, at least for the company providing the financing, that we're going to make a certain number of late fees, and that's going to create a margin for us that allows this business to operate well.
Right.
But,
go ahead.
In our last episode, we were talking about cars, and it makes sense to me if you showed me a chart here where my, Hyundai Tucson had payments. If you're not paying cash, then you're going to make payments and they're going to be equal. There's going to be some interest involved, but at least that makes sense. But I just can't believe that someone is buying a coffee on a payment plan. And how does that work? Because, I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I've never tasted it, but I know that people do. Well, because I don't want to get like all of you people who have to have your coffee every day. I legitimately said that's not going to be a thing for me, but everybody else seems to need a cup of coffee every day. So what happens on day 2? And by day 6, now they're just paying the same amount. Very quickly, this does not work out for people.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point. I think that's what the post is about. Like, hey, after day 4 or after payment 4, now I can go get another coffee, and that's the vicious cycle of this. And I think that's where the merchants are. And I'll throw out some numbers for you here. It basically, this 70 for this model, 70% of revenues come from the merchant transaction fees. So that's the biggest portion of this. And merchants get sales they wouldn't otherwise have, more customers, higher average spend as a result of this. And the
Mm-hmm.
merchants, generally don't increase their prices. They're looking at, because of this model, they get about a 20 to 30% increase in sales and a 20 to 50% boost in average order value,
Wow.
which just seems crazy.
Yeah.
But this is such a new thing, and it's like this graphic in and of itself kind of just illustrates the absurdity of what you're walking through in your head trying to make sense of.
What I would love to have in terms of data on this is the average age of someone who is using this. Because I have 10-year-old students in my classroom, fifth graders, who
Right.
drink Starbucks drinks. I don't think it's coffee, but there's other things.
Sure.
And so I'm wondering if this is sort of skewing to an age demographic of, let's say, 15 to 23, where there are people who genuinely don't have money sometimes or don't have a lot of money in their pocket.
Right.
And they get their Starbucks, and maybe it's their parents who are paying for it, or maybe it's them. But I could see where one of my 15-year-old students would be like, well, I don't have $8 for a drink today, but I'll put it on a payment plan. And maybe because
Yeah.
they're not addicted to it yet, they
Yeah.
don't need it every day.
Yeah.
It might make sense for them. I still don't think it
Right.
makes a lot of sense, but I'm sort of struggling here to make a story fit these numbers. And it's I gotta be honest, it's hard.
So interestingly, the number here for this, the population group, is 40% of Gen Z has used this at least once. The buy
So
now, pay later. So you're a teacher, you're probably more familiar with all the different generations than I am. But Gen Z is kind of their exemplar here of 40% of them have used this at least once. So it definitely skews to that younger demographic for sure.
Well, does it though, Tom? Because that means 60% are older than Gen Z and they're using it, right?
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe that other 60 so is Gen Z the youngest generation? I should have looked that up before I started
No.
this, but
No,
that's
Gen Alpha is younger
Gen
than
Alpha.
them. So
Okay.
my son, who's 13, is in Gen Z, and he's at the edge of Gen Z.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so maybe it also is younger than that. I didn't look up that'll be interesting. We may have to do a follow-up to this to see, okay, like at what point can you do buy now, pay later? What age do you have to be to qualify for that?
and does it affect your credit score? Are you building a credit score at the age of 12?
That's interestingly, right now, it is not part of your credit. And they're looking at instituting changes that may become a part of your credit rating and so on. But right now, it doesn't have any link to your personal credit.
Yeah. If you had asked me to guess what percentage of, let's say, Gen Z was using
Right.
this at Starbucks, I would have hoped, for sort of the sake of humanity, that the number would have been 75%. 40% was really disturbing to me, because I'm pretty sure that everyone like younger than my son, younger than 13, is probably not using this,
Right.
which means 60% of people are in Gen X or older and doing
Older.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So that
Yeah.
number is scary to me, actually.
Yeah. And the fact that it's being used all the way down at the Starbucks level is what's incredibly interesting to me. Or DoorDash, that's part of this post as well. These different places where you're getting, whether it's your food or your drinks or whatever. The fact that may be a possibility for you is to make that in 4 easy payments is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I guess let's try this on for size, though. We may be the victims of a bit of sensationalism here,
Oh,
because
sure.
what we're looking at is, I didn't even occur to me, but this is one purchase. Like, if Starbucks is having sort of maybe one of these purchases per store per day, then we're okay. Then we
Right.
just have one problematic person going into a Starbucks once a day. If, let's say 20% of their purchases look like this, then I think we're in some trouble. So, this is one person who actually made the purchase for the purpose of eventually posting on X. So perhaps this is something people aren't really doing at Starbucks, and this is being done to make a point, but not a realistic point. I'm trying to get myself there, Tom, just so I can feel better about our country.
Well, and maybe this is going to be I'm going to mark this down, that we're going to have come back and have a follow up on this, because I think the numbers of people using this for, whether it's, Starbucks just happens to be the poster child here, but whether it's DoorDash or any of those things, I think that number is higher than you think. And based on the growth of this industry and how many, overall consumers, that, the other number that I pulled on this is that a total of 50 million consumers have used this option across, a variety of different purchases, not just this. But I think that's the interesting thing, is that this is a growing trend. It's not a shrinking trend. And it doesn't have the same stigma that I think like Layaway used to have, for,
right. Yeah, it's a good point. I've been, I follow the stock market and I invest in individual stocks on my own. And I've seen these companies pop up, and they've popped up sometimes as recommendations for me. Like, you might want to consider this stock. I'm trying to remember some of the bigger names in the space.
Yeah, but Klarna is one.
What was it?
Klarna, it's also listed here. Yeah.
Yep. And every time it's sort of popped up in a recommendation, I thought, that's not going to last. Nobody's going to want to do that. It's just a credit card. It's just another version of a credit card. But perhaps, again, I was making my stock purchases based upon wishful thinking and a story that I wanted to be told, rather than a story that was being told.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about this is one of those things. I remember, and we've talked about this in one of our first episodes, this notion of a story should cause change. And this is one that the story is, like you and I are having problems with the thing that it's asking us to change, right? Is this view. And so I just it was so jarring that I couldn't help but bring this out as a set of numbers that we should try to figure out.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for playing along. This was a great episode. We'll see you on the next one. You've reached the end of the show. We ask that if you found this useful, that you please tell a friend. Leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you're watching us via YouTube, please like and subscribe.